Hello YouTube, welcome to the channel, and Bella, and today I'm going to be reviewing Toy Story 4. Now what was interesting about Toy Story 4 is it is very similar to how Toy Story 1 is done. It focuses mainly on a couple of characters and you follow their journey and everybody else gets to stay behind. It really is, in a nutshell, Woody coming to terms with the fact that he's sort of no longer necessary in Bonnie's room as a toy there. Now that's quite interesting because it's how he's treated by, I think, Bonnie's parents, the majority, because there's this scene where Bonnie's dad steps on him twice. And I think that's really kind of interesting. And the fact that she's not really got any more toys since the last time we saw her. And her room is kind of small, so this is interesting in itself. Yes, we've got the relationship with Forky, but it really is about Woody's coming to terms with the fact that he's no longer required in Bonnie's room. It's about Buzz and Jessie coming to terms with coming to terms with the fact that they're going to have to step up and basically leave the room at some point. It's really, really nice to have Bo Peep back in, and her girl sheep as well. There were some really nice moments with them, but also it didn't give enough. It gave you enough, and then you could put the gaps together. Some of the stuff for a U-rated film was kind of odd, particularly that blue rabbit and the little chicken. Some of their ideas with the old lady, that was a bit questionable, but it was funny nonetheless. It was interesting to see how Gabby played out, and I actually felt sorry for Vincent in the end because all the Vincents are still stuck in second-hand antiques, but they're not scary, they're helpful. Overall, I would give it a 4.5. For a small child, I think they'd struggle with some of the plot because it's not as inventive. It's got more character story and more backstory required, so you do have to have seen Toy Story 1, 2 and 3 to be able to get where Toy Story 4, the main light point, is for it and what's actually happening there. Overall, yeah, it is a 4.5. It's got a slower pace as well, which is nice because it allows you to build up the characters. It's nice that we get Canada gets a mention with Duke Kaboom, which is just awesome, and Little Officer Dimple, who mentions there's a He-Man reference it. And it's quite interesting to see how toys that don't have rooms and owners live their lives. That was really interesting to explore. Like, they go from playground to children's party hoping to get played. That's interesting. And it's also quite telling that gaming hasn't really come into this yet. Admittedly, Bonnie is still a small child. I mean, she's only going into kindergarten, but there's no gaming, there's no Nintendo consoles, there's no Switches, none of that. So the whole Toy Story premise is about imaginary play with toys, which you don't actually see children doing a lot of at all. Never mind making a toy out of a spork and lolly sticks. I mean, that's positively medieval, and some people discourage that, which is totally wrong. It is an interesting story, and it's interesting to see how things develop and who becomes friends with who and what happens. Overall, it's definitely 4.5. It is good, but you have had to have seen the other 3 Toy Story films to actually fully appreciate it and what it means. There was some sentimental moments, there was some teary-eyed moments on screen and off from audience members. It was good. A lot of people said that it wasn't as good as Toy Story 2 or 3. Toy Story 3 was such a good way of wrapping everything up. You felt that everything was done, but then there was the big question of what happened to Woody and Bo Peep, and I know a lot of fans wanted to know what happened to her, and this is the perfect answer, and it answers that in such a pro-feminist way that I think a lot of people will enjoy the film, but they'll also be kind of angry. Because it's also interesting what Woody says about having his inner voice, about his voice box. And you could say that when Gabby did, because her voice box was broken and it didn't work, she didn't have a conscience. But then you could apply that to Vincent. He doesn't have a voice box, but he's good. And then you could apply that to Bo because she's never had a voice box. But does that mean she's good, or does she use her high social intelligence to manipulate others to doing her bidding? Unknown. That's interesting in itself. It was nice to have a flashback to poor old RC. That poor RC is always having to be rescued. It's a nightmare. Overall, I do think that it was a good film. Did it need to be made? It was more fan service for the older fans, but that's the same with a lot of programmes these days. Oh look, I'm in the dark. Yay. Overall, I definitely give it 4.5 stars. It was fun to watch, a little teary, highly emotional actually, and the resolution was satisfactory for everybody, and it really is a good film. You really do feel that Buzz and Jessie are going to be able to take on and lead the room because they've been set such a good example before. But I'm very worried about her unicorn. Let's send Dad to jail. That unicorn needs help. Oh, and Mr. Pricklepants is there, of course, but he got left behind, probably to guard the room. But I don't think he would have minded. Also, there wasn't the 3 peas that lived in that pea pod. They weren't in the movie. So it looks like Bonnie has got even less toys than she did, which is interesting. Overall, definitely 4.5. It was fun, it was nice, heartwarming, and it was a great way to say goodbye to Woody, but you weren't really saying goodbye, you were more sort of giving him time with Bo that he never had because it was cut short for reasons that are explained in the film. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Please like, comment and subscribe, and go and see the movie because I rate it highly. Bye!